first of all, welcome everyone. Those who don't know me, I am the mayor of the city of Gloucester, Sabathia Romeo Taken. It's my honor because I love all you seniors, but it's also my honor to introduce Congressman Seth Moulton. He is our friend for seniors. As you know, that when he was running last year, we took our own little selfie upstairs, and I says, what can you do for seniors? Make sure that we get our prescription drug program, make sure they don't take away from our seniors, and make sure we have the only one in Massachusetts prescription drug coverage, which is the prescription plan that covers the donut holes. So Prescription Advantage. So he kept up to his word. We have it. It's still intact in Gloucester. In Massachusetts, I should say. We're very lucky to have someone so young understand our seniors. I told him one thing that you can learn from seniors is they love to educate us, and it's the best schooling you're gonna get. It's the best education we'll ever get. You can learn so much from a book, but what we actually learn from our seniors is amazing. And you know what he says? They're great. I'm learning so much. They're great supporters, and he still wants to continue to learn from you, and that's why he's here today to actually thank you. So, Senator Moulton, I'm sorry, maybe that's the next step, but Congressman, thank you so much for coming. We have two little side tracks. Why don't you come up, and he wanted to give you something. He wants to show you something.
My name is Bob Quinn, and I'm a member of the board here at the Senior Center. And since all of our eyes are going to be on you today, I put together a little memento.
He says he's on the board here, and he did something very nicely for this congressman. He says, since all eyes are going to be on you today.
And as a result, as a memento of our presentation.
No kidding. Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you very much. I'm confident it complies with the congressional gift rules. So.
By the way, those are pieces of driftwood from the beaches of Gloucester.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Good.
There you go.
And Seth,
it really feels like Christmas.
Seth, this is a gift that Bruce and Sabathia and I took upon ourselves to give you from everybody here in the room and everybody in the community. So if you can take 30 seconds just to open it, everybody will understand the gift and why we want you to put it into your office.
All right. Are you going to get mad if I waste the paper?
No.
Oh, wow, look at that. This will go right in my office. Thank you very much.
And we want you to
There's
think
no
of
mistaking where this came from. So,
That's right, you're official.
well, first of all, thank you so much for coming out here today. You know, there are many parts of the country and the world where a little bit of rain would discourage people from showing up to an event like this. But not in Gloucester, not in Massachusetts. I'm thrilled that you're here. I think it is fundamentally important to my job as your representative in Washington to spend time listening to you, to understanding your concerns, to hearing what's on your mind, to doing what you want us to do. You know, so many of the great ideas, the projects that we pursue in the office don't come from some, congressional book of big ideas down in Washington. They come from the constituents that we represent. Many of the bills that we are pursuing are from ideas that originated with folks like this, with folks like you, often in meetings like this. So it's fundamentally important to my job as your representative that I do these town halls, and I'm very proud that I've actually held more town halls than any other Democrat in Congress, House or Senate this past term. And I'm going to keep doing it. But let me just say, on a special note, what an honor it is to be here in Gloucester. You all are very lucky because you have an incredibly engaged set of leaders right here at home. Senator Tarr over here, has been an example of the kind of bipartisan cooperation that I try to pursue in Washington, the platform upon which I was elected. I love working with this guy, even though he's a Republican. So. And he has represented you admirably for a long time. You're lucky to have Senator Tarr here in the district. Representative Ann Margaret Ferrante has been a longtime friend, an early supporter on the campaign trail, and someone that I have listened to very carefully on a wide range of issues, but especially to understand the fishing industry that is so important here in Gloucester. And one of the greatest ways that she has contributed to me and to my office is by giving us Morgan. Morgan Bell, where is she? Gloucester native who works in our Salem office, used to work for Ann Margaret. We're very, very lucky to have her. And to the mayor, of course, who I first met in this very building upstairs. And let me tell you, it was a very cordial meeting. She grilled me for about 45 minutes on where I stood on all sorts of issues, and was one of my earliest supporters. So, Mayor, thank you. Thank you for all your success, and thank you for the great work that you do here in Gloucester. So the point is, I don't only listen to you, I listen to all of them as well, and I think you're lucky to have them. But let me give you a relatively brief introduction to some of the work I've been doing in Congress so that I can get to your questions, to your comments, your concerns, your complaints, whatever is on your mind, so don't be shy. I sit on 3 committees down in the 114th Congress: the Armed Services Committee, the Budget Committee, and the Small Business Committee. And I think that they are all very important to the constituents I represent here in the district. A lot of people ask, how do you think about your priorities? How do you decide what you're going to work on? Because there's such a wide variety of issues that we cover in Congress literally every week. Well, we try to organize things into 3 buckets: international, domestic, and district. So on the international front, a lot of that work has to do with the Armed Services Committee. And I am trying to focus on the kinds of threats that America will face, not just today, but in the coming decades, things like cyber war. I don't think we're doing enough to counter the cyber threat from Russia and other adversaries. So while some people in Washington want to cozy up to Putin, I think we need to stand up to Putin, and we need to stop them from invading our internet. I'll tell you a quick story. You know, I was sitting on the Sea Power Subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee, where we decide the budget for the Navy and the Marine Corps. And a lot of times the debate on this committee is about, well, you know, you said you'd build 37 destroyers and now you're only building 36. This other destroyer, you know, represents a lot of jobs in my district and everything else. And I just said, look, I think sometimes we spend too much time just talking about the number of ships when we ought to be talking about our capabilities. And so I asked the Navy, I said, I understand there are statutory requirements for the number of aircraft carriers we have. So, oh, yes, there are. Well, are there statutory requirements for investing in cyber? Are there statutory requirements for R&D? No, there are not. And I said, well, how many times have the Chinese attacked our aircraft carriers in the last 20 years? Well, sir, they haven't. Well, how many times have the Chinese attacked us through the internet in the last 24 hours? So I think we need to rethink our priorities. But the other thing I spent a lot of time doing on the Armed Services Committee is just talking about and strategizing how to deal with a terrorist threat. With ISIS, I've been very active on our policy in the Middle East. I've talked about how it's not enough just to have a military policy to defeat ISIS. We need to have a diplomatic plan to ensure the peace, so that when we're done with this particular terrorist group, countries like Iraq can maintain their own national security and we can finally bring the troops home for good. I released a document called the Iraq Strategy, where I laid out some of the things that I think need to happen to ensure that we can finally come home. Now, on the domestic front, there are a lot of issues that we cover, but one of the areas where I've really tried to focus is taking care of our veterans. Now, I know that that's something that's very important to this community, and Gloucester has a proud tradition of taking care of your veterans, and you should be proud of that. But there's an awful lot of work we still need to do. I made a commitment as a member of Congress to continue getting my own health care from the VA. So I declined the congressional health insurance. They all thought I was crazy. And I still go to the VA. In fact, I go to the VA right here in the district in Bedford. And my experience at the VA has been that the doctors are often very good, and the quality of medical care is often very high. But a lot of times the bureaucracy is impossible to deal with. Even just getting an appointment can be incredibly difficult. And I see some nodding heads in the room of fellow veterans. So I introduced a piece of legislation recently called the Faster Care for Veterans Act that will enable veterans to make appointments right on their smartphones. So you can see a cancellation on Thursday and grab it right away and know that you can get into the VA. Now this will also help free up the phone lines for veterans who do not have smartphones or do not want to use the internet. We got it passed through the House on a bipartisan basis. On Saturday night, we got it passed through the Senate. It's sitting on the President's desk this morning. And I think that bill is an example of the kind of work that you can get done, even in the midst of a very divided Washington, a very partisan climate, if you're willing to work across the aisle, if you're willing to find common ground with Republicans. And that's the platform upon which I was elected. That's a mantra that I've tried very hard to live up to as your member of Congress. I recognize that I do not just represent Democrats. I represent Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, everybody across the political spectrum. And I try to honor that commitment seriously. And I think that because of that commitment, developing relationships across the aisle, I've been able to get things done like the Faster Care for Veterans Act on the President's desk this morning. Now, at the district level, my priority has been economic development. And economic development in our district means different things in different communities. It's not one size fits all. So for all the 39 cities and towns that I represent, I consistently hear economic development is a real priority for us. We want more good paying jobs. But some people want jobs in different things. And one of the examples I often use actually is Gloucester and Newburyport. Think about this. If you look at those two cities on a map, you don't know anything about Massachusetts, but you just see Gloucester and Newburyport on a map, they look pretty similar. They're basically in the same location. They are seaside communities. And yet we know how different the economies of Gloucester and Newburyport are. Do you know how many hours I have spent in commercial fishing meetings in Newburyport? Exactly 0, right? But we've spent a lot of time here. So the point is that we do not come in as a congressional office and try to say, here's one size fits all for economic development. We're trying to be responsive to the concerns of the community. I've appointed Jason Denoncourt on my team to be our economic development director. That's not a normal position on a congressional staff, but it's something that I think is real important. And he's done an awful lot of work. One of his priorities has been the city of Lynn, just because I think a stronger Lynn would be good for the entire 6th district. And just as one measure of our success, as a direct result of the state, federal, local team that we put together called the LEAD Team for Economic Development in Lynn, we have about $117 million of private sector real estate going into Lynn just next year. And Lynn hasn't seen that kind of investment in a long time. So we're making progress, but we do have an awful lot more work to do. And I know many folks in the district are concerned about the election results. They're not quite sure what this new world portends, and I'm happy to talk about those questions as well. One of the things I am trying to do is provide people some outlets, some opportunities, some ways that you can give back and contribute if you feel like Washington remains out of touch or is even more out of touch after this election. So know that while I have a very strong commitment to bipartisanship and take seriously my job representing everybody in the 6th District, regardless of political parties or political views, I will also stand up strongly for our values. And regardless of who is in the White House, if I disagree with him or her, I'm going to say so. Just this past weekend, this whole Russian hacking thing really came to the forefront. And President-elect Trump went after the CIA, trying to discredit the CIA. And I just posted on Twitter. I'm one of the only members of Congress who does his own Twitter. I try not to do it at 3 a.m., but I do my own Twitter. I just said, look, I have always been willing to criticize President Obama when I disagree with him on national security issues. I'm waiting for my GOP colleagues to do the same with President-elect Trump. And I have to say I was very proud to see that, I think it was last night, Senator McCain and Senator Graham came out and did exactly that and said that what's going on with Russia is very, very concerning, and we as a country, in a bipartisan way, need to address that threat. So with that, let me turn it over to you, and I will try to be as democratic as I can in going across the room and taking questions, and we'll try to get to as many folks as possible. So we'll just start over here. Yes, sir. I'll move from left to right. I'd be happy to repeat the question. Good suggestion. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name's Tom Delaney. I've come down from Rockport. So,
well, Tom, you're welcome here.
and I had a number of questions.
Come to the big city, right?
That's right. Speaking of big cities, I want to talk about Washington for a second. I've spent, before I retired, 40 years working in the substance abuse field, and I still have an interest. And I was thinking, well, you know, what committee you might be on. And then when you mentioned the Small Business Committee, I remember when Senator Wyden, who was then Congressman Wyden, held a hearing in Washington on the impact of substance abuse on small businesses in particular. And it's a subject that the people at the National Institute of Alcoholism and Alcohol Abuse have kind of neglected in the intervening many, many years. And I just want to suggest to you that the committee may want to have sort of a hearing to see what's needed, what's been done, and what the efforts are on how the impact of substance abuse on business.
Tom, thank you for that suggestion. I think it's a great suggestion, and my staff will take it down, and I'll speak with Margot, actually, from my Washington office, leads our Small Business Committee work, and see if there's an opportunity there. I think we all know in this community, but frankly I can say this in any community that I represent, the impact that substance abuse, and in particular the opioid crisis, has had on our communities, on our business, on our friends, on our families. It's frightening and extraordinary. And I actually have a whole section of my website just dedicated to all the things that we are doing and have done, bills that we've supported, legislation that we've co-sponsored to try to address this crisis. To do things like get more money to community health centers, to address it at the local level, to adjust the laws for writing prescriptions so that doctors can have more control over preventing abuse. We led an effort to make sure that the Massachusetts database and the VA database, which previously didn't talk to each other, can be coordinated so that someone who is addicted can't go and get a prescription at the VA and then go get the same one from CVS across the street. So that is the kind of work that we are doing to address this crisis, and I'll tell you, it affects every community across the country. And while we don't agree on all the details, it is a place where Democrats and Republicans in general are coming together to try to make progress, because it truly is a crisis. So thank you. Thank you for the suggestion. Yes, sir.
Hi. Martin Ray from Gloucester.
Hi, Martin.
1972, I came home from Vietnam. I was a third-generation regular Army officer. I was confused by that experience, but I thought, we've learned something that couldn't possibly happen again. Now, you have been part of the next great military adventure overseas. What do you plan to do in Congress to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
Well, Martin, thank you for your service. Martin came home from Vietnam in 1972, and he said very confused by that experience, and certainly hoped that it was an experience that wouldn't be repeated. But now, you know, I served in Iraq. I did 4 tours in that war. I now sit on the Armed Services Committee. Martin's question is, what am I doing to prevent a mistake like that from happening again? And it's a great question, because, you know, I wouldn't even be a member of Congress without that experience in the Marines. I didn't grow up interested in politics, Perhaps I should have been, but I wasn't interested. I hadn't volunteered on a campaign, hadn't been an intern on Capitol Hill or anything like that. But when I was in the Iraq War, I felt I saw some of the consequences of failed leadership in Washington. And I saw those consequences in very human and personal terms. And in fact, there was a day in 2004 when a young Marine in my platoon, he was sitting down at the end of a long day, he looked up at me and he said, "Sir, you ought to run for Congress someday so that this stuff doesn't happen again." Now, to be honest, he used a Marine term for stuff, but I think you understand what I mean. So that's pretty fundamental to why I'm here. I didn't decide at that very moment that I was going to run, but I certainly thought back to that moment, to that brief conversation with that corporal in my platoon, when I was actually approached by a veterans nonprofit about running for office. We've actually never had fewer veterans in Congress in our nation's history than we do today. And one of the things I see on the Armed Services Committee, I saw it just this past week as we were debating the nomination of General Mattis to be Secretary of Defense and how to make sure we maintain the important civilian control of the military that's enshrined in our law. There's a real difference between the views of veterans and non-veterans on the committee. And not everybody's in the same category. I mean, there are veterans who want to drag us back into wars. But overall, those of us who have seen the effects of war firsthand are the ones who are most careful about getting us involved again. Sometimes I ask folks, how many of you think we would have gone into Iraq if every member of Congress had a son or daughter in the military? And I actually think we would have gone into Afghanistan after September 11th. So I'm not saying it would turn our country into a nation of peaceniks, but I think we'd be a lot more careful. And so one of the things that I am doing in Congress, to get to your question, is I'm a big supporter of national service. Because I think if more people had the opportunity, this is not a draft, but the opportunity to serve their country, whether in the military, in Peace Corps, in City Year, I think if more people had that opportunity to serve their country, we'd be a lot more careful about what we do overseas. So that's one of the things I'm fighting for long term. But I'll also tell you this, every single day when I sit as a member of that committee, in hearings, some of them classified, some of them unclassified, some of them public, some of them very, very secretive, I never forget where I came from, that I wouldn't be a member of Congress if not for my experience in the Marines, and that fundamentally it's Congress's job to decide whether or not to send young men and women from our communities overseas to put their lives on the line for our country. So it's a responsibility I couldn't take more seriously. And sir, thank you for your service. Okay, I'll go here first. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you so much for the event that you organized yesterday. Your team, the Together North Shore event, was amazing. I mean, I've never been to a meeting that was so effective. And I want to thank you for helping your constituents to become more involved in national issues. It's really
Well, thank you very much. I'll repeat that because I think a lot of people couldn't hear. Sorry, what's your name? Amanda, thank you very much. Amanda was just thanking me for the event we held yesterday at Peabody High School, which was an organizing event for our community, where people came together to say, I want to make a difference. And for many people, this election was a call to action. And we have received so many requests to the office saying, what can I do to help? What can I do to help prevent what might be rolling downhill from the White House? What can I do to make sure we preserve our values, our American values, our community values, our family values in the light of what happened? And we are working hard to answer that question. Yesterday was a conversation to start answering that question for our community. We had well over 500 people, almost 600 people show up on pretty short notice to Peabody High School to meet with organizers, to meet with groups that care about issues like immigration reform, like climate change, like a wide variety of issues. And people are concerned, but people want an opportunity to take action. So we will continue working to answer this question. And let me just explain something I think it's a lot of people don't know about congressional offices. We have a sort of Chinese wall between the campaign side and the official side. So, like, if you're signed up for my campaign email address, we can't even have that email address on the official side. There are two entirely different email lists, two entirely different Facebook pages. We can't even share across them. So make sure you're signed up for both, because you're all here today as an official congressional event. The event you're talking about was a campaign event. You'll notice there are no Seth Moulton for Congress signs up here behind me today. Yesterday was a campaign event. Make sure you're keeping in touch with both. Obviously, it would be more convenient for me to just have everybody on the same list, but there are congressional ethics rules that prevent us from doing that. And we're very, very respectful of those laws. But this was a campaign event that was very well received, and we're going to continue doing more of that kind of thing going forward. Yes, sir.
My name's Sam Callamore.
Hi, Sam.
I'm a former city councilor, and I was a combat medic in Vietnam. And I saved my whole platoon in Vietnam from getting annihilated through God. And it's true. He knows, Senator Tarr knows quite well of the miracles I've done through God. From God through Senator Kennedy, from God through me through Senator Kennedy, I've done 4 of miracles. And it's true, as Senator Kennedy will attest to. And I've been looking for a writer, because I can't type good, to help me, a ghostwriter, to help me write the book that I'm supposed to write through God. I brought Market Basket here and put it in a place where there was nowhere to be found. There was nowhere. My real estate advisor I told him Market Basket's coming to Gloucester, and he said, and I said, we need a mall. He said 2 things, Sam. Market Basket's never coming to Gloucester, and there's no place to build a mall. All that's left is wetlands and woods and boulders and a ledge. And in the Bible it says if you have half a mustard seed of faith, you can move the mountain. Where I put that mall was a mountain there, and they moved the mountain. And I want to tell you, I did all these things through God, and it's true. And I see the Tote bookstore in Rockport is maybe going out of business. Okay. But I want to see if I can get help, maybe through the bookstore, or find a writer to write this beautiful story of what I've done through God.
Well, Sam, thank you very much, and thank you for your faith. I'm not a ghostwriter, so I can't help you myself, but I certainly encourage you to write that story. So thank you for your faith and for your service. Okay, we'll try to go around like this, so I will get to the other side of the room. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your service, first of all, both in the military and in Congress.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it greatly, more than you probably know. Couple of questions. Congress has been at an impasse with the president for many years now, and the term gridlock has become in common usage. Now we've got a Republican president, and the Democrats are on the other side of the aisle, and they're the ones that have to do a better job than the GOP has done, cooperating with President Obama. Is that possible, and how can you be part of it? And the second question has to do with immigrants, and how the heck you're going to vet immigrants who are peasants and potential threats to the security of this country. My wife was 2 blocks away when the bombs went off at the Boston Marathon, and I'm very apprehensive. So I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for those questions. You're absolutely right, and I was, as I said before, elected on a platform of bipartisanship. I am working hard every single day to find areas of common ground where I can work with folks across the aisle. I passed 3 bipartisan bills through the House. I wouldn't have been able to do that without the support and, frankly, the respect of Republicans that I've been able to work with. But you should also know that I'm going to stand up strongly when I disagree with the president. And that's a part of this, and that's part of this too. And I think, frankly, I think, frankly, you've seen that with President Obama. I mean, President Obama and I have worked closely on a number of issues, but I have had a lot of disagreements with his policy in Iraq, for example, and I've been very outspoken about that. And we've had discussions. He in fact, spent about 20 minutes on the phone with me just talking about the Iraq strategy that I proposed a few weeks ago. So I will make sure that that dialogue continues, and that we find places where we can work together. But I also stand up when I think that our values, our principles, our Constitution may be under assault. Now, with regards to immigrants, and I think the implication of your question is especially about refugees, how do we vet the folks who come into our country? How do we make sure that folks who are coming in are safe? It's a very important thing that we are able to do that for our national security. Now, with regards to refugees, the Department of Homeland Security, the State Department, and a variety of other federal agencies have worked out a very complex vetting process that actually takes about 2 years to complete. And it's gotten to the point now where it is far more difficult to come to the United States as a refugee than it is as just about anybody else, like a traveler, for example. So if you're a terrorist from ISIS, for example, and you want to come to the United States to perpetrate a terrorist attack, about the stupidest thing you could do is to try to go through the refugee pipeline, because it has the strictest vetting of any traveler to the United States. And that's just a fact. Now, there are other ways you could come to the United States, but the facts are that refugees have the strictest vetting of any traveler to the United States. And you're shaking your head, but those are just the facts, sir. That is the truth. Well, if you don't buy it from me, then you should just look at the process. Go to the FBI website and see why this process is so thorough and why it takes 2 years. So, well, there are a lot of ways that you vet them, some of which are classified and some of which are not. But there are a lot of ways that you can vet people who are coming to the United States to see if they're safe. But one thing that I will also say that is fundamental to our values, we are a country of immigrants. We are a country of people from all across the globe. You know, all of us have, some of our blood comes from immigrants from different parts of the world. And we need to uphold those values to remain being a country that is a beacon of freedom for the oppressed across the globe. We have to do it in a way that is safe, that is as safe as possible, so that we maintain our security. But upholding that commitment, both of those principles, that we will be safe and that we will maintain our values, is critical to our future. But thank you very much for the question. I appreciate it very much. Okay, well, just work my way around here. Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah. Have you read the book, The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy?
I have not read that book,
by
sir.
Professor John Mearsheimer. It basically says what General Petraeus and General Mattis have said, which is that America's radical pro-Israel foreign policy gets Americans killed. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think our policy is radically pro-Israel. I think we try to be very balanced. And we try to recognize that we have a commitment to our strongest ally, democratic ally in the Middle East, which is Israel, but that we don't agree with everything that they do. And I've been outspoken when I disagree with their settlement policy, for example. I've met with Prime Minister Netanyahu, really questioned him hard on the Iran deal. We disagreed on that as well. So I think what we have to do as members of Congress, as American citizens, is make sure that we are always pursuing our national interests, not just the interests of an ally. But we also have to have a commitment to our allies. And Israel is an important ally in the Middle East. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hi,
Good to see you.
So, a couple comments here. One, the VA. I love the VA. I'm lucky and blessed to have private insurance, and I also have the ability to go to the VA. I found the VA has been much more effective and easier to use than my private health care. I'm going up there later this week. I've had no problems. Maybe they don't like you as much as I do.
They might not like me as much as you. It's hard to imagine not liking a member of Congress if you're at the VA. But No, thank you. I'm glad to hear your experience at the VA has been very good. I can tell you, my experience has been very mixed. I have had excellent service, especially at the VA hospitals here in Massachusetts. Bedford has been great to me. Before I went to Bedford, I went to Jamaica Plain, and they were really just top-notch. Shortly after I got sworn in as a member of Congress, I had to get a minor surgery down in D.C., however. And I went into the Washington, D.C. VA, and after, gave them name, rank, social security number, whatnot, after about 20 minutes, they looked at me and said, "We can't prove you're a veteran, so we'll consider taking you as a humanitarian case." Now, I didn't throw out that I was a member of Congress. I kept that quiet. But I sat down in the waiting room next to veterans who'd been sitting there for 5 or 6 hours just waiting to get seen by someone. So I think the reality is that we're very blessed here in Massachusetts to have some excellent VA facilities here in Gloucester and Bedford, in Boston. But that's not the case across the country, and that's why I'm fighting so hard to make sure that no matter where you are, if you're a United States military veteran, you deserve the best health care in the world, period, no exceptions. But thank you.
Representative Tim Ryan and trying to get the leadership, and I hope he'll do the same for details. That's the direction I'm on.
Well, so the comment was thank you for my support of Representative Tim Ryan. What we're talking about here is the leadership challenge in the House of Representatives on the Democratic side of the aisle. And I was kind of the instigator, the rabble-rouser behind saying that rather than just simply essentially reappoint Nancy Pelosi to her position, let's take this seriously and have some self-examination about what went wrong in this last election. And I have nothing against Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she gave me the committee assignment to be on armed services, which is so important to me. But I think that as a Democratic Party, we've got to ask, why did we lose touch with so many voters in this past election? And it's not just this past election, because if you look at House elections, 2014 was pretty bad, 2012 was worse, 2010 was a landslide for the Republicans. So we've really got to ask, where have Democrats gone wrong? We don't control the House, we don't control the Senate, we don't control the White House, we don't control state legislatures across the country. We have 16 governorships. That's abysmal. It's the worst position the party has been in decades. So rather than just rush into reappointing the same leadership with the same message, the same messengers, I said, let's take the time to ask if that's really the right way forward, the right strategy for the future. And when I did that, we didn't even know that Tim Ryan was going to run. Representative Tim Ryan is from Ohio. And he hadn't even said he was going to run. I just said, let's have the time for other people to run. After Tim Ryan proposed his platform, and I compared that to Nancy Pelosi's platform, I decided to support Tim Ryan. And although Tim Ryan lost the election in the end, he got a third of the caucus, a third of the Democrats in the House of Representatives to vote for him in just 2 weeks, over Thanksgiving. She's had 13 years to get support on her side. So that was a real call for change. And although this is kind of inside baseball, if you look at Tim Ryan's platform, the Democratic caucus has now adopted just about all of his proposed changes. So we've forced that, including 6 positions that were to be appointed by Leader Pelosi are now elected by the caucus. We've really democratized the House Democrats. And the result is that we should be more in touch with the American people and giving more people in our caucus the opportunity to have their voices heard. So that has been a big effort of mine over the past few weeks, and it's because, fundamentally, I don't think we listen to folks in this election. So I need to get over to this side of the room.
We have time for just one more quick question.
Oh, geez, all right. Massachusetts, there it is.
Hi, I am probably one of your newest constituents. I have been living in South Carolina, and after the election, for people like me, it got much less safe in the South. I am not kidding. And
well, you're welcome here.
Very happy to be here. A lot of my friends who stayed up north were really shocked by the election because they're in their nice little blue bubble. I didn't have the luxury of that bubble. And some of the stuff I'm hearing coming out of the South as ideas are really, 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 really terrifying. But mostly, I would like you to support Representative Clark's HR 6340, which is the President and Vice President Accountability Act.
Yes, I do
The
support
President of the
that.
United States would have to disclose any conflicts of interest and divest all of his private personal assets into a blind trust so he's not confused. I'm concerned about Sarah Palin's appointment to the VA because I don't think she's capable of that. And as a woman who gets her birth control from the VA, I don't think she would permit me to do that anymore.
Well, I share your concern about Sarah Palin's
And,
position at the VA. It's hard to imagine, but
I was also hoping that she would get in touch with wolf-pac.com, which is to remove money from politics, which is the biggest corrosive force, which is all these billionaires, this dark money that is influencing elections and buying ads and creating smear campaigns so people can't see the difference.
yeah, so I'm a huge advocate for. I am a huge advocate for campaign finance reform. In fact, Larry Lessig, who's a professor at Harvard Law School and one of the national leaders on this effort, endorsed me in 2014. He only endorsed a few candidates across the country, and I was one of them because I believe that it's so important that we get money out of our politics. And let me just talk about how terrible this influence is. You know, I have to spend a lot of my time fundraising, which I don't want to do. I probably spend less time fundraising than just about any other freshman because I'm trying to just get reelected based on the work that I do. But I'll tell you, it is a tremendous burden of time taken away from doing things like helping all of you. So, and I'm not even talking about the influence. I mean, I've never voted for something because of some donation or something. But I think that that's maybe not true for everybody down in Washington. Newsflash. All right, I'm almost done. But so we have got to have campaign finance reform, and it's a huge priority. Some people think there's nothing that could do more to fix our politics than getting money out of politics. I will continue fighting for that as your representative. All right. You want to wrap up?
Congressman Moulton needs to be in Raleigh, I believe. It's 10 minutes ago or so. But I want to thank you so much for giving us this opportunity for a town meeting where you gave folks the opportunity to speak directly with you. How many people here still have questions? Okay, that means you need to come back again. We're very proud to have you here. We want to thank you. We want to thank Bruce Tarr, Margaret Ferranti, Mayor Safadro, Mayor Teakin, and also from the Mayor's office, Chris in the back there. Thank you for all coming today. And we're having a salad bar that's free. For everyone, fresh salad bar, welcome, there's coffee and whatnot. But please come again. We have to set another day because there's lots of people here that want to speak to you. Thank you.
I will come back. And thank you all so much for coming on today. Stay in touch with my office. Come visit the office down in Salem. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter. You don't have to tweet. In fact, sometimes it's nice if you don't tweet because people say nasty things. But you're welcome to stay engaged. I am tremendously honored to be your representative in Washington. It's a responsibility I take so seriously. I'm proud to represent you. I'm proud of our district. Let's keep this conversation going. Thank you very much.